Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Authors on Mission podcast. So we're going to start off today with a little visualization. Picture this. You're sitting in a prison cell, having chosen loyalty over self-preservation, watching a carefully constructed world crumble around you. Your uncle decides public perception matters more than family promises. You're 25 years old, and by measure society uses, you're a failure. But fast forward 15 years, that same person is the CEO of a multi-state company with over 20 locations, having built and sold multiple businesses worth millions. He's speaking to audiences of hundreds, sitting on nonprofit boards, and literally saved his father's life by donating some bone marrow. So some amazing stuff here. But that transformation isn't luck, it isn't connections, and it isn't coming from money. What happens when somebody masters the art of betting on themselves when nobody else will? So our guest today is Chuck Cuda, entrepreneur, CEO, and author of Ego Strength. Chuck's story is more than just business success. It's about the radical transformation that happens when you stop pointing fingers and start taking responsibility. I'm excited for an amazing episode today. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's a pleasure to have you on. It's great to meet you again. I'm wondering if we'd like to start off today by giving everybody a little bit more of an introduction to yourself. I gave a little bit of an overview here, but if you don't mind just filling in the blanks a bit.
Yeah, you did a great job. Yeah, so born and raised in Kansas City. I was an entrepreneur at a very young age. I started a Christmas light hanging business when I was in high school. That was my first business. I would pick up about $25,000 a year hanging residential Christmas lights. I ended up going to jail, as you mentioned, for refusing to testify in a grand jury investigation after I had already built a successful career in commercial real estate. When I got out, I was gazelle intense. I ended up marrying the girl of my dreams. I married my wife, Anna Marie, and we have 4 beautiful children, 3 boys and a daughter. I coach 3 Little League baseball teams and currently own and operate 6 different businesses.
Wow. Yeah, definitely an inspiring story that you've managed to come up with throughout life. So it's wonderful. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the moment you decided to take all these experiences and write them into a book? What exactly was it that was the catalyst for, I have to put this into words. I have to share my story with others.
Yeah. So, being an entrepreneur, I move on from the wins typically as quickly as I do the losses. And you're only as good as the next deal. So I never really reflected back on my journey until I did a North Kansas City Business Council breakfast that I hosted at one of my businesses, Oak Ridge Family Social Club. And it was to share my entrepreneurial journey, where I started to where I was today. And this was a little over 2 years ago. And as I'm reflecting and writing all of the businesses that I've started, the deals that I've done and sold, I said, wow, how did I manage to do this in such a short period of time? Because I never really reflected back on it. And when I got done with that breakfast, I had a couple of people come up to me and say, you should write a book. And I said, you know what, I think I will. And then that's when I started the process. It was a little over 2 years ago. And here we are today.
Here we are today. That's great. And sometimes it just takes that little push to be like, you know what, I have to start writing this down. So that's an inspiring story. And I'm sure a lot of authors that are listening today might have had similar experiences. But what matters is that you went ahead and you took that and you started writing it down. So that's great.
That's right. And the main purpose was exactly what you said, to inspire change. You said it's an inspiring story. If I could inspire change into the next generation and the generation to come, that's what's important.
Yeah, definitely. And, speaking of inspiring, I think one of the most inspiring things that, you and I have chatted about before is your coffee shop story. You lost a ton of money at first, but you brought out all of your investors to protect the relationship. So I was wondering if you'd like to walk the audience through that decision-making process a little bit.
Yeah. So all throughout my life, relationship has always been more valuable to me than the money or the monetary gain or the monetary loss. And my dad instilled those values in me as a kid. So, I listed a property for sale in Independence, Missouri, that was perfect for a coffee kiosk. We had an operator come to me and say, hey, I want to lease this building, but I need to raise, $50,000 in capital. I went to some friends and family. I didn't have the $50,000 at the time to put up. So I went to friends and family, gathered the $50,000, and then our operator ended up skating with the super automatic espresso machine, all of the cash in the account. The only rent that he paid was the first month's rent and security deposit when he signed the lease. And my father-in-law owned the property, so I felt like he got slighted. I felt like my family and friends, I was responsible for introducing him to this man. I just felt like I was personally accountable for that, and I didn't want there to be bad blood with anybody over the investment itself. So I said, you know what, I'm going to borrow the money, buy them out, and I'm going to make this thing work. When you look back at that deal, the location was prime and prime. I mean, 60,000 cars a day were going by it. So it was really just, wrong person in place of the operation. So all I had to do was find the right operator to come in and assist me with the operations, learn as much as I could about the coffee shop industry, and really try to grow and scale that business to get everybody whole. Well, I already got them whole, but to get my money back along with whatever profit I was able to make at the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate you kind of, spreading a little bit more light on that. But that's not even the only success that you've had in your life, too. I mean, besides that, you've also had your cannabis company story. I mean, you told the CEO, I know I could do better than you. I remember you telling me a bunch about that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that, too. I mean, you've been through so much here. I think all of our audience could really benefit from these stories.
Yeah. So the cannabis story is very similar to the coffee shop, only instead of being tens of thousands, it was tens of millions. So we went out and we raised $21 million to start that company. And a lot of it was, again, friends and family money. Well, I say a lot of it. Some of it was friends and family money. And then a good portion of it was me and a primary friend and investor of mine. But it was my buddy PJ and I who went out and interviewed all the operators, because you needed out-of-state operational experience when applying for these licenses in Missouri. And we were the ones that chose to go with the operator that we went with. That was our choice. And when that operator had capital call after capital call, never saw financials, we felt like it was then our responsibility to figure out a way to make that investment work. And the only way that I knew how to make that work at the time was either, us buy him out or him buy us out for a number that made sense. And, that's where that line came from when we were all in our meetings with our attorneys and whatnot. And I was just telling him about some of the things that I noticed from an outsider who's run multiple successful businesses. And he said, you think you could do this better than me? And I said, I know I can. And that's when we ended up buying him out of the operation. But we did so, much like the coffee deal, was to protect our original investment. And it was an industry where we didn't know a lot about, but I knew that I was willing to learn, and I knew that I was capable of stepping in and running that company and making it successful. And the nice thing about that deal is, when we bought him out, we had one cultivation, one manufacturing operation, and 3 retail dispensaries in the state of Missouri. And like you said in the introduction, we're up to 20 dispensaries across 3 states now. So we've been able to succeed and grow and scale that business.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's amazing to know that it's gone from something so small where you shared these stories to now, and using the strategies, which I'm sure you talk about a little bit in your book, you've really been able to grow and expand. Was there any specific framework that you were using as you were scaling and improving yourself in this way?
Yeah, so anytime you scale up, you've got to lead by example. You've got to delegate to elevate. You have to find the right people, put them in the right seats, and really cultivate a mindset and a culture that not just you have, but all of your directors, all of your employees share with the same growth strategy and feel like they're really rowing in the same direction. So I'd say culturally, that's one of the things is a primary focus of ours.
Right. And I'm sure ego strength is also a primary focus, also being that is the, title of the book. So, this transitioning a little bit into the content itself, would you mind breaking down what that means and how someone could develop it?
Yeah, so ego strength in essence, is taking the proverbial look in the mirror and making the changes that you need to make to become the best version of yourself. So rather than just pointing the finger at other people, it's pointing the finger at yourself and making the changes necessary to become the best version of yourself.
Understood. Right. So the book itself then must kind of go into a bunch of details, some examples. Is there one specific example that you might want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, so for me, that realization that all of the choices that I've made in my life were really on me was when I was in jail. I went to Leavenworth CCA October 5th for refusing to testify in the grand jury investigation, like you said, choosing loyalty over my personal gain. And on Thanksgiving of that year, I'm an Italian American. The heritage of the Italian American family is that you get together all of the holidays. Well, the first holiday that I spent away from my family was Thanksgiving. And in order to give the correction officers the day off, we were stuck on 23-hour lockdown, and they gave us a brown bag with a couple bologna sandwiches in it. And that was our Thanksgiving dinner. And, the first 6, 8 weeks, I'd been pointing the finger at the prosecutor, the judge, my friends. But that was the realization for me where I said, listen, it's no one else's fault but myself. I'm here because I chose to gamble. I chose to make the decisions that I made. And now I've got to spend this time, rather than pointing the finger or saying, poor me, how do I improve? How do I get better so that when I do get out of here, I'm ready to hit the ground running, and I'm going to accelerate, wealth generation. I'm going to accelerate all of my life's goals and plans, rather than just sit back and point the finger and, play the poor me card.
Right. And rather than that, poor you card, as you just described it, you kind of just bet on yourself. And I can see how there's a big difference between, sort of recklessness with doing that, but confidence, right? And I think that's something that you definitely have built up. And that's a big part of ego too, is that confidence aspect. So I'm wondering, is there any specific thing you've done to build that necessarily? Or is it just kind of a natural instinct?
Well, I mean, confidence was, something that was instilled in me as a young child. I always had belief in myself, and my dad always said, whether you think you can, you think you can't, you're right. And that's one of the Henry Ford quotes that I tell my kids now. You got to believe in yourself, but also like affirmations. When I got out, there's two things that are non-negotiables for me on a daily basis. It's affirmations in the morning, and then self-reflection in the evening. So, having the ability to convince yourself, almost to manifest it. When you believe in it so much, you're more apt to accomplish it.
Understood. Right. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. So transitioning a little bit into the writing process. I mean, I'm sure, this is your first book, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about, the process of selecting the stories and the framework that you included in this book? Did any of the stories change significantly from what you first imagined to the final process? This isn't for Authors Podcast, so we love to hear about this sort of thing.
Yeah. It was a very difficult process, to be honest with you. I mean, it was something obviously I'd never done before. But when I started the process, I interviewed a few different writers to help me out in the process, to work on the outline, and to really help me get my story out of my mind and my heart and my body and onto paper. So, we started the process in the first 12 months. I basically just threw up on 97 pages. I was walking around, I was doing the phonetic typing, talking into text, and trying to stay online with the outline. What I realized once I'd go one chapter at a time, what I realized once I read the entire book from front to back, I said, this is missing something. It's missing the personal stories that go in line with this. And I really needed to be vulnerable and open up about some of the things that I didn't necessarily initially want to open up about. So if you are going to write a book, there's got to be vulnerability to it. And that was one of the things when I did the rewrite and I redid the outline, I kind of identified what stories would fit well in the mindset chapter, what stories would fit well, your values inform your goals, and leadership, et cetera, right on down the line. And I think the second time through the writing process on the book was a lot more easier when I realized, hey, you've got to be an open book. I mean, you're writing a book to be open. You have to be open.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how that, you kind of have to be willing to open up and just let your ideas flow, but also not hold anything back. I'm guessing that's kind of a process you had to navigate throughout. Is that correct?
It is.
Right. So what other challenges did you face during that process? Is there anything that, if somebody was in your shoes and they've been through so much in their lives, what would you recommend for them when they were starting the process themselves that maybe could have helped you first getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I think just having the ability to allocate the time towards it and picking someone to assist you that's maybe in a like time zone as you. Don't pick someone to assist you who's in a 12-hour time difference or a 10-hour time difference, and make sure that you're able to allocate the time necessary to really focus on it. Obviously I'm operating 6 businesses, 4 kids. It's hard for me to find the time. I did it, I would do it at 5 a.m. I would do it at midnight, but it is a commitment, and I think that the biggest challenge is thinking that it was going to be easy, because it's not.
Right. So would you say that that's kind of how you dealt with the busy schedule aspect of it, the late nights and early morning work sessions?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say once I realized that this was supposed to be a fun, engaging process, and I became more open about it and more vulnerable, it actually became therapeutic. And once I got done writing the book, because there's so much that you want to say, and I could have kept going on forever, honestly, even on the rewrite. I told Kathleen Sperdetti, who helped me out at the end, I said, at some point we have to just stop, because I could keep changing chapter, but it becomes therapeutic, and you do want to get as much on the paper as you can.
Understood, right. And I'm glad that you were able to see it as therapeutic, because I totally agree. I have a lot of clients who say the same thing, going through old memories and talking about it, it can be healing. So I'm wondering, has the book changed your perspective on your journey? The writing process itself changed the way you thought about anything?
It actually has, as I was going through the last 15 years of my life, like I said, I never really reflected back and said, man, I've accomplished so much, because I'm not one to pat myself on the back. And being open and honest about some of the stories and some of the things that I've done, it really has changed, how I look at myself. I look at myself. It's like, I do a lot, but it also makes me want to do more. It makes me want to give more. It makes me want to be better. Just like I'm trying to inspire change in others. When I read my story, I still feel like I could change in my own ways, change for the better in my own ways. So I think it's helped me from a communication perspective, especially in the four walls of my house with my wife and kids. It's helped me from that perspective, because I'm utilizing things in my book to try and get them, to be better aligned, and get my kids to have a better mindset and whatnot. So now I'm trying to then implement better communication strategies with them that I talk about in the book, goal setting strategies, allocate even more time than I already did to the family, so that it's not all about work. So I think, the practice what you preach, I'm trying to now lead my kids by even more so than I already did by example.
I love that. That's great that you've been able to not only share your journey and not only help others experiencing similar situations by reading your book, but also you're helping yourself. That's great to know. And I'm happy that the writing process was so therapeutic and that you're able to apply that into your own life now. That's great. So now that the book is out on the shelves, I understand you've been doing a bunch of podcasts and promoting the work, but I'm wondering what else might be next? Have you considered perhaps a book number 2? What's next on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I have my first speaking engagement in Ohio in November, so that's exciting. I think some speaking, some coaching would be fun and interesting for me. I don't have plans for book number 2 yet.
Well, hey, that's always something to be considering. And that's awesome that you're having this speaking engagement. I'm wondering if you'd like to share a little bit about that with the audience, a little bit more about it. Being that a lot of authors nowadays, we all know that it's important to get a book on the shelf, but it's important to promote it and speak of it and continuously spread the word. So what exactly has been a part of this preparation for it? Is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience that maybe you found challenging or, pretty easy in the speaking aspect of it all?
So in the speaking side of things, I've done quite a bit of public speaking in my day anyway. It's a healthcare summit that I've done some business. One of these guys has been a consultant for us in the hospice space, because we currently operate a hospice company in Missouri and Kansas. And he read the book. He actually asked me what my favorite chapter was before he read the book, and I told him it's chapter 4. The values inform your goals, and really trying to align your values with your goal setting strategy. And after he read the book, he loved it. He loved the idea of the vision board. So he wants me to come and speak specifically on that chapter and try to get the leaders in the healthcare industry to understand how important it is to do that manifestation, to align your vision or your goals with your values, because you're more apt to achieve them and accomplish those, obviously, if they're relevant and important to you.
Understood. I appreciate the additional context for the speaking and all of that. I think this is stuff that everybody should be retaining and using, after they write their book. A lot of people think that you just write a book and do away with it, but you need to continuously spread the message, which is exactly what you're doing. So that's great stuff. So I'm wondering, as we begin to wrap up today, people want to reach out to you and learn a little bit more and get connected. What is the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the social media account of choice. I really don't have any other social media, but I do have a website. They can reach out on the website. They can reach out on LinkedIn. I do respond to virtually everybody on LinkedIn. As a matter of fact, I met a woman this morning for coffee who I'd never met before, who was asking about the commercial real estate industry and just had some questions for me. So I try to find time, because that's really what it's about for me. It's about what you leave behind and not what you take with you. So the legacy that I can leave behind, as many people as I could help in this world that could then, be like a web of ego strength. That's what's important for me.
I think that's incredible that you're not only accessible to your readers and your audience, but meeting them for coffee, really offering your tips in a face-to-face personal conversation. That's really inspiring. So great stuff. To everybody listening today, we're going to go ahead and put the link to the book in the description box of the podcast today. So you can go ahead and click on over, get connected, stay up to date, follow for more information about the upcoming speaking event too, which is really important to stay tuned into. So now, Chuck, I'm wondering, what advice might you have to the listeners today? Any bits of homework that they can probably apply after this podcast is over to improving their own life, or with their writing strategies, or anything else that you might think of?
Yeah, I think if they're looking to improve their own life, they first have to have the mindset to do so. The perpetual growth mindset, where even if you improve a little bit each day and the continuous improvement, you have to constantly be willing to change and improve for the better. Change is hard, even for the better. So just be willing to look yourself in the mirror and make the changes for the things that aren't serving you or those around you to the best of your ability, and change those.
Hey, well, thank you for that. I think that's really important for everyone to keep in mind also. Anything for the writing side of it, that for the authors out there today?
Stick with it.
Stick
I
with
almost quit after 97 pages. Stick with it. It's a great accomplishment.
I know you can't fall off. You have to stay accountable. Hold yourself accountable. Hold others accountable. We got to follow through with our goals. That's important.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for coming on today. It's really been a pleasure seeing you again and chatting a bit about the book. I'm so excited to hear about all the speaking engagements and wonderful reception of the book. It's incredible stuff. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Likewise. Thank you, Danielle.
Of course. That's Chuck Cuda, everybody. His book is released and out there, so go ahead, check it out. Again, we'll have the links in the description box of the podcast today. And to our listeners, just remember the stories that matter most aren't the ones where everything goes perfect. They're the ones where someone faced impossible odds and chose to keep going anyway. So if this conversation has been inspiring to you, again, check out the book, because Chuck's story reminds us that your current circumstances don't determine your final destination. Your response to their circumstances is what matters. So thanks for joining us. Make sure to check out our other episodes. And until next time, keep on betting on yourself.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.